Let us speak a bare, uncomfortable truth, a wake-up call to an entire continent. How does the most resource-rich landmass on the face of the earth find itself perpetually waiting for peanuts packaged as foreign aid? For decades, the narrative has been written by outsiders, a story of managed poverty, a story of endless dependency. The wealth of the earth is relentlessly extracted, shipped across oceans, and then sold back to the rightful owners as charity. But what happens when a nation simply refuses to play this rigged game anymore? Breaking news out of West Africa is currently forcing global analysts to completely tear up their economic models. Burkina Faso has just unveiled a national development roadmap so massive, it is sending shockwaves through the old global order. We are looking at a $64 billion strategy, a comprehensive 5-year vision designed to dramatically reshape the very fabric of the country's economy by the year 2030. For a nation whose entire gross domestic product was previously calculated to be far smaller than that staggering figure, this announcement immediately raises massive, urgent questions. It is a bold, unapologetic declaration of sovereignty. Stay with us, this is more than a headline. It is a hinge in history. If this story resonates, show your support with a like, a comment, or a subscription. It means more than numbers, it keeps the story alive. Why would any developing nation suddenly launch a plan of this enormous magnitude? To understand the shockwave, you must first understand the deep, structural injustice it is designed to dismantle. For generations, the international system has operated on a quiet, suffocating logic. The foreign powers extract the raw wealth, while the local population is handed conditional loans that act as invisible, unbreakable chains. The true cost of this neo-colonial arrangement is never paid by the politicians sitting comfortably in distant, air-conditioned capitals. The cost is paid by the men and women whose calloused hands work the earth every single day. It is paid by the farmers, the factory workers, and the youth who are systematically stripped of the right to determine their own destiny on their own ancestral soil. While historical data regarding the exact billions lost to this colonial extraction model over the last century remains obscured, the devastating reality is visible in every unpaved road, every underfunded hospital, and every unlit village. Foreign aid was never designed to bring freedom. It was carefully calibrated to maintain a fragile, manageable dependency. It was a system built to ensure that the continent remained a perpetual exporter of raw materials and an importer of finished goods, trapped in a cycle that punishes ambition and rewards submission. But a quiet, powerful revolution is taking root in the red earth of the Sahel. Under the steadfast leadership of Ibrahim Traoré, the nation is refusing to wait for external saviors who only arrive with heavy conditions and hidden agendas. This $64 billion blueprint is not just another glossy policy document drafted to appease international lenders or secure another round of temporary financial relief. Officials are insisting this is a complete economic transformation, built entirely from the ground up. It is a master plan to rebuild stability, strengthen the state apparatus, prepare an entirely new workforce, expand national infrastructure, and ultimately unlock the immense economic value of the country's own resources. They are preparing to plant the seeds of an entirely new industrial era, ensuring that the harvest belongs strictly to the people who tend the land. The vision is to break the cycle of raw extraction and build an economy where the wealth generated by the soil actually serves the citizens who live upon it. It is a fundamental shift from begging for a seat at the global table to building a completely new table, defined by self-reliance and national pride. The era of accepting peanuts while sitting on a mountain of gold is coming to a definitive end. Yet, the sheer scale of this ambition leaves global economists and international observers utterly baffled. A $64 billion investment over 5 years is an astronomical sum for a nation emerging from decades of structural neglect and exploitation. How exactly is a developing nation planning to turn this monumental vision into a concrete reality without bowing to the traditional global financial institutions? How will they mobilize such vast capital without sacrificing their newly claimed independence and falling back into the debt trap? And perhaps the most profound mystery of all, when you look closely at the architecture of this massive economic roadmap, it does not begin with the construction of flashy factories, towering skyscrapers, or international trade hubs. The very first pillar of this economic master plan is something entirely different. Before any talk of industry, trade, or grand infrastructure, the plan begins with the urgent, uncompromising need to secure the land. Why must the road to a $64 billion economic prosperity begin with a battle for physical survival? The first pillar of this staggering $64 billion development roadmap begins with a stark reality that many economic plans, often drafted in comfortable foreign offices, usually relegate to the background. It begins with security. For decades, the international community has prescribed economic solutions that completely ignore the physical realities on the ground. But the architects of this new vision understand a fundamental truth. You cannot expect a rich harvest when the very soil is heavily contested. The government is placing stability at the absolute foundation of its transformation strategy, because the past decade has shown how deeply insecurity can disrupt everyday life and paralyze economic activity. When security deteriorates, entire local economies begin to systematically shut down. The men and women with calloused hands, the true engines of the nation, hesitate to travel to their fields because the roads are no longer safe. Traders avoid the transport routes that once connected rural communities to bustling city markets. Construction projects stall because companies cannot guarantee the safety of workers and essential equipment. Under these fragile conditions, genuine economic development becomes entirely impossible to sustain. Instability is the invisible tax that strips the wealth from the working class, leaving them vulnerable to exploitation and perpetual poverty. Therefore, officials behind the new National Development Plan firmly believe that restoring stability across all communities is the indispensable first step toward rebuilding economic momentum. The logic is as simple as it is profound. When communities feel safe again, people naturally return to their normal activities. Farmers boldly resume cultivation, vital transport networks reopen, and local markets begin operating with renewed energy. Furthermore, stability allows the government to definitively re-establish its administrative presence in areas that have experienced severe disruption. When local institutions return, basic services such as education, healthcare, and public administration can finally operate effectively. Crucially, the roadmap does not frame security purely as a military objective. It repeatedly emphasizes the vital concept of social cohesion, which refers to the painstaking process of rebuilding trust between citizens, local communities, and state institutions. Years of engineered instability can severely weaken public confidence in national systems, and restoring that sacred trust is absolutely essential for any long-term development. Communities must believe that their institutions can protect them, manage public resources responsibly, and support sustainable growth. By placing stability and social cohesion at the beginning of the national roadmap, the nation is attempting to rebuild the fundamental conditions required for a sustained, historic economic transformation. However, restoring stability only creates the opportunity for development. It does not guarantee it. A country still desperately needs institutions capable of managing massive projects and coordinating complex national policies without falling victim to the systemic corruption of the past. While specific figures detailing the exact billions lost to bureaucratic inefficiency and administrative fragmentation remain closely guarded, the crippling effects of that old system are universally understood. That harsh reality leads directly to the second pillar of the roadmap and raises a critical question. If stability allows development to begin, how will the state ensure that it is organized well enough to actually deliver the massive transformation it has promised? This brings us to an aspect of the roadmap that is less visible but arguably the most important of all: completely reforming the state itself. The government understands that true economic transformation requires a public system capable of planning, coordinating, and delivering complex national programs. In the past, development initiatives in many developing nations slowed down not because the ideas were inherently wrong, but because government structures were deliberately fragmented or highly inefficient. Ministries frequently worked independently without coordinating their policies. Budgets were blindly allocated without clear links to measurable outcomes, and projects moved painfully slowly through dense layers of administration. To aggressively address these systemic issues, the new roadmap introduces a major revolutionary shift in how government finances and programs are organized. One of the most significant changes is the complete adoption of program-based budgeting. Instead of allocating funds simply to maintain bloated institutions, this rigorous approach links government spending directly to the concrete results those funds are expected to produce. Ministries must now actively demonstrate how their budgets contribute to specific, measurable national goals, whether that involves improving vital infrastructure, expanding modern education, or strengthening key economic sectors. This changes how public institutions think about spending. Rather than focusing on routine, stagnant administrative operations, ministries are now forced to focus entirely on outcomes. Each program is strictly evaluated based on whether it achieves its intended objectives. This system fiercely encourages efficiency and accountability while helping policymakers carefully track the real, tangible impact of government investments. When citizens clearly see that government programs produce real results, confidence in national institutions naturally grows. This confidence encourages widespread participation in national development programs, transitioning the state from a passive administrator into a dynamic, central driver of economic growth. Let us take a moment here, not to rush forward, but to give thanks. Write a comment with a simple thank you to Traoré, to Burkina Faso, or to the spirit of sovereignty itself. Gratitude is not a formality. It is recognition. It is dignity expressed in words. When you add your voice of thanks, you are not just engaging with a video, you are standing in solidarity with a story of freedom and pride. So, before we continue, take this pause to comment your thank you. Together, those words become a beacon that shines far beyond the screen. When the borders are finally secure, and the government is operating as a unified, transparent, and highly efficient machine, the grand blueprint is ready to be executed. The structural foundation has been poured, and the systemic rot of the past has been cleared away. But even the most perfectly designed engine cannot run without fuel. Even the most efficient ministries cannot transform an entire country without people who possess the skills, the health, and the profound knowledge required to drive modern industries forward. As the nation prepares to activate this $64 billion master plan, a massive challenge emerges. Who will actually build the roads, operate the technology, and drive the innovation necessary to power the country's economic future? The machine of state has been rebuilt, and the borders are being secured with a steel-like resolve. But as the blueprint for this $64 billion revolution unfolds, it reaches a pivotal turning point, a realization that has escaped the grasp of many who came before. Institutions alone cannot build a modern economy. Even the most efficient ministries are merely hollow shells without the pulse of a capable, healthy, and educated population. This is why the third pillar of this national development roadmap focuses with laser-like intensity on human capital, placing the people of Burkina Faso at the very center of its long-term economic strategy. For decades, the burgeoning youth population of the Sahel was described by foreign analysts as a demographic time bomb, a looming crisis of unemployment and instability. But under the defiant vision of Ibrahim Traoré, that narrative has been flipped on its head. Where the world saw a threat, the new leadership sees the ultimate economic advantage. They are not looking at a burden, they are looking at the most powerful engine of growth ever assembled. The National Development Plan treats this moment as a definitive pivot in history. Rather than fearing the expanding youth, the state is framing them as the primary architects of a new era. Before we reveal the next chapter, which is perhaps the most powerful assertion of sovereignty you will ever hear, I want to pause and speak directly to you. If this channel has moved you, if these stories are touching something deep in your spirit, then consider becoming a member, not for exclusive content or perks, but because supporting this channel is directly supporting narratives that mainstream media refuses to tell. Every membership is a vote for Sankara's Echo's mission. Every member becomes a co-creator of the revolution we are documenting. Join us. Stand with the principle that African wealth belongs to Africa. The roadmap prioritizes massive, non-negotiable investments in education, vocational training, and healthcare. It begins in the classroom, but not the classrooms of old that were designed to produce obedient administrators for colonial systems. This is an education for liberation. Literacy, mathematics, and critical thinking provide the foundation, but the real shift occurs in vocational training. While the exact percentage of the budget allocated to these new technical institutes compared to traditional universities remains a matter of strategic internal policy, the intent is clear: to create a workforce that can actually build. Construction projects require trained technicians. Manufacturing industries need workers who can master complex machinery. Modern infrastructure networks depend on indigenous engineers, electricians, and maintenance specialists. By aligning education with the industrial needs of the $64 billion plan, the government is ensuring that when the call to build arises, it is the sons and daughters of the soil who answer, not highly paid foreign contractors. This is how you ensure the wealth of the nation stays within the nation, by ensuring the skills to create that wealth are held in local hands. But a skilled hand is useless if it is weakened by neglect. Healthcare, therefore, is treated not as a charity, but as an essential component of national productivity. A healthy workforce is more resilient, more consistent, and more capable of maintaining the intense momentum required for this transformation. When healthcare systems improve, particularly in the rural heartlands, the entire economy stabilizes. Workers lose fewer days to illness, and families can focus on growth rather than survival. Over time, these investments create a human foundation that can support the weight of a $64 billion ambition. Human capital is the real engine, the true fuel of the revolution. Yet, even the most skilled workforce in the world cannot succeed if they are trapped in isolation. A genius in a remote village is silenced if there is no road to the market. A brilliant engineer is paralyzed if there is no energy to power her factory. Human capability unlocks the potential, but physical infrastructure determines how far that potential can actually expand. As the nation prepares to connect its people to their future, a massive, looming question remains. In a world where global finance is used as a weapon of control, where will the billions of dollars for this infrastructure actually come from? How can a nation build world-class roads, energy grids, and digital networks without selling its soul to the very institutions that seek to keep it in debt? Human potential is the fire that drives a nation, but physical infrastructure is the hearth that contains and directs that heat. Even the most skilled population, equipped with the sharpest minds and the most dedicated hearts, cannot build a modern economy if the physical systems that connect production, markets, and services remain fractured and limited. This realization brings us to the fourth, perhaps most visible, pillar of this $64 billion roadmap. It is a massive, uncompromising investment in infrastructure expansion, a mission to lay the tracks for a future that no longer begs for a seat at the table of others. Infrastructure determines how easily the lifeblood of economic activity moves across a land. When the transport networks are weak, the harvest of the rural farmer rots in the sun, unable to reach the hungry markets of the city. When the energy systems are unreliable, the gears of the factories grind to a halt, and the dreams of the industrialist are silenced by darkness. When communication networks remain limited, the entrepreneur is isolated, cut off from the global flow of information and finance. In these conditions, productivity stays low, not because the people are lazy, but because the system is designed to keep them small. The roadmap for Burkina Faso therefore prioritizes major investments in transportation, energy systems, water networks, and digital connectivity. It is a plan to build the roads that lead out of poverty and the energy grids that bring the light of progress to every corner of the Sahel. Transportation is particularly vital. It is the physical link between the production zones and the commercial centers. These logistics corridors allow agricultural goods to move from the rural heartlands to the cities where processing, packaging, and distribution can occur. It is about reducing the distance between the hand that grows and the hand that buys, lowering costs and encouraging a vibrant internal trade that has been suppressed for far too long. Energy infrastructure is the second vital artery of this plan. Reliable electricity is not a luxury, it is the fundamental requirement for any industrialized society. Manufacturing plants require stable power to run their assembly lines, refrigeration systems, and heavy machinery. When energy becomes accessible and affordable, new industries emerge from the red earth like sprouts after the first rain. Water systems and urban infrastructure play an equally critical role, supporting the growing cities that act as economic hubs. Furthermore, digital infrastructure is receiving unprecedented attention, allowing small businesses to access online platforms and financial services that were once the exclusive domain of the global elite. Take a second, right here, to tell us where you are watching from. Type the name of your city, your land, the soil beneath your feet. And as you do, know this. Sankara's echo sends you not just thanks, but a blessing for strength in your hands, for pride in your heart, for light on the road ahead. The comments below become a map of connection, showing that this message reaches far beyond borders. But as the blueprint for these grand roads and energy grids unfolds, the most difficult question of all emerges from the shadows. Construction projects, energy systems, and digital networks on this scale demand an astronomical amount of financial capital. $64 billion is not just a number, it is a mountain. In a world where the traditional global financial institutions use their loans as a form of soft colonization, where exactly will these resources come from? How does a nation, emerging from decades of managed dependency, find the wealth to pay for its own revolution without selling its future in return? The financing strategy outlined in the roadmap is perhaps the most radical act of sovereignty of all. It begins with the fierce strengthening of domestic resource mobilization. For too long, the wealth of the nation flowed through leaky systems of tax collection and inefficient public management. By plugging these holes and ensuring that every cent of national revenue is directed toward national priorities, the state can begin to fund its own transformation. This is about building a state that does not need to beg because it knows how to manage. Natural resources represent the second financial pillar. As one of the leading producers of gold on the continent, the soil of the nation is literally filled with wealth. However, the roadmap shifts the focus from simple extraction to genuine oversight. Instead of allowing foreign corporations to carry away the lion's share of the profit, the state is moving to ensure that the revenues from these resource sectors are redirected toward the $64 billion goal. It is a mission to ensure that the gold in the ground pays for the roads on the surface. Yet, perhaps the most innovative idea in this financial master plan is the concept of citizen shareholding. This is a model that bypasses the traditional, conditional loans of the West and the East alike. It allows the ordinary citizens, the people with the calloused hands, to invest directly in the industrial and infrastructure projects of their own country. By purchasing shares in national initiatives, the people become shareholders in their own destiny. It raises capital while simultaneously strengthening national ownership. When a citizen invests their hard-earned savings into a national energy project, they are not just funding a grid, they are buying a stake in the future. This combined financial strategy is a direct challenge to the old world order. It is an attempt to mobilize capital that remains strictly under national control. The direction is unmistakable. The era of the debt trap is over. The state is no longer a passive recipient of aid. It is an active architect of its own financial destiny. However, even with the money in place and the infrastructure rising, there is one final, profound barrier that must be overcome. Building a road is one thing, but ensuring that the wealth that travels on that road stays within the country is quite another. For centuries, the global economy has been designed to pull value away from the Sahel and toward the industrial capitals of the north. Ibrahim Traoré is facing the ultimate test of economic independence. How do you stop a nation from being a mere exporter of raw dirt and transform it into a global powerhouse of finished goods? The financing has been secured, and the physical roads are stretching across the land like new veins of hope. But as we reach the final layer of this $64 billion roadmap, the deeper objective becomes undeniable. The goal was never simply to build infrastructure, train workers, or expand government programs. Those elements are merely the tools, the sharp blades of a plow meant to overturn a system that has been entrenched for centuries. This is an attempt to fundamentally change how the economy of the nation produces. For many decades, the economies of the Sahel operated under a tragic, repetitive pattern. They were resource-rich regions that relied heavily on exporting raw materials while importing finished goods produced by the very nations that bought their dirt. This is the cycle of the peanuts we spoke of at the beginning, generating just enough revenue to survive, but ensuring that the true economic value, the industrial growth, and the job creation remain outside the borders. It is a system that allows others to grow wealthy from the seeds of the African soil, while the people with the calloused hands are left with nothing but the dust. The strategy for Burkina Faso is a definitive move to shatter this pattern. The roadmap encourages the aggressive development of domestic value chains, meaning that mineral resources and agricultural products are increasingly processed locally rather than exported immediately in their raw form. When a nation processes its own materials, it generates an entire industrial ecosystem, refining, manufacturing, packaging, and distribution. Each of these steps creates new businesses, new opportunities for the youth, and new wealth that circulates within the national economy rather than vanishing across the ocean. Take the mining sector as a clear illustration of this new logic. The nation is already one of the leading producers of gold on the continent, but for far too long, that gold left the soil and headed straight for foreign refineries. The new roadmap changes the conversation. It encourages the participation of local industries in every stage of the mining value chain. By developing the capacity to refine and process resources domestically, the state ensures that the true value of the earth stays in the hands of its people. It is a shift from being a mere extraction site to becoming an industrial hub. The same principle applies to the agricultural heartlands. Many developing economies produce staggering quantities of crops, but export them before a single ounce of processing occurs. The $64 billion plan aims to connect the rural farmer directly with local food processing industries. Imagine a future where the harvest is transformed into high-value goods within the same region where it was grown. This strengthens rural economies, creates thousands of jobs in manufacturing and logistics, and builds a diversified economy that is no longer at the mercy of global price fluctuations or external shocks. This shift reflects a much broader, more profound conversation happening across the entire continent. Many governments are finally seeking ways to capture the full value of their natural wealth. By expanding industrial capacity and linking different sectors together, they are building economies that are resilient, independent, and proud. If this roadmap achieves its ambitious goals, the trajectory of the nation will be permanently altered. Infrastructure will connect rural production with urban industry. Skilled workers will drive new sectors, and domestic processing will ensure that the wealth of the soil serves the people first. However, the announcement of a strategy is only the first step on a very difficult road. The real test of this $64 billion vision lies in the implementation. Over the next 5 years, these projects must move from the silent pages of a policy document to the noisy reality of construction sites and industrial zones. The challenges are immense, and the opposition from those who profit from the old system will be relentless. But as the plan moves forward, one question remains at the very heart of the global discussion. Will this ambitious strategy truly transform the nation by the end of the decade, or will the challenges of execution prove too great for the vision? As we prepare to end, remember, this is not the end of the road, but a seed planted in the soil of your heart. Every story of dignity, every voice of sovereignty, is part of a harvest that lies ahead. If you want to see that harvest grow, subscribe. Let this channel be the road we walk together, the light we carry forward. Your subscription is not for us alone, it is for the promise of what is still to come. Join us and be ready for the next chapter that is already waiting to be written. The road ahead is steep, but the light of sovereignty is now too bright to be ignored. We have seen the lies of the old world and the potential of the new. The era of manufactured dependency is reaching its inevitable end, giving way to a new dawn where the soil and the soul are finally reunited. In this monumental shift, the unwavering vision and leadership of Ibrahim Traoré serve as a powerful reminder that an African nation can indeed forge its own path without external permission. The success of Burkina Faso in reclaiming its territory and its dignity has provided a blueprint for the entire continent to follow. As the old empires scramble to maintain their grip, they find that they can no longer suppress the spirit of Ibrahim Traoré, which has ignited a flame of independence that will burn until every strategic resource is back in the hands of its rightful owners.